Alafia y bendiciones. I am Melody Capote, Executive Director of the Caribbean Cultural Center, African Diaspora Institute. I am the daughter of Laura and Alberto Moreno, mother to Jovan, Kailani, and Ariane, and goddaughter, ahijada, of Marta Moreno Vega, Baba Funke, the founder of the Caribbean Cultural Center, African Diaspora Institute. Bendición, madrina. Bendición to my elders. I am Omo Ochun. The Caribbean Cultural Center is a cultural organization dedicated to advancing equity, racial, and social justice for African descendant people globally. Now in 2026, we are marking our 50th anniversary year, and we are asking you to join us in the celebration. We have great programs planned throughout the year, including the upcoming Violines para Ochun, and a fundraising campaign that will require each of you to support us. It is a matter of survival and love for our organization. And so, as the call and response community that we are, know that we will be calling on you for support. And our hope is that you will respond with a resounding yes to making donations of money and volunteering your time. The work we do has never been easy. Cultural rights, the fight for liberation, the reclaiming of our land, the demand for justice and equity, and the intentional recognition of our spiritual practices and sacred traditions are often met with rejections by the philanthropic sector. And yet here we stand, presenting programs like tonight's Letra del Año because it is our responsibility to do so. And the answer to the call from our communities, you. We must remember the importance of coming together for our collective ashe and for collective ebos. There is an absolute need for us to gather, plan, organize, and strategize for our collective survival. In this very challenging political climate, we must call upon our ancestors and each other and remember the models of survival they created in the face of adversity and in the many attempts to destroy and erase us. The cabildos, the quilombos, the palmares, the maroon societies, the underground railroads, the prayers, the silence, the ebos. We need ongoing collective ebos. Yes, collective ebos. We welcome you this evening to this year's Letra del Año, a conversation with traditional leaders that we highly respect and honor. It is presented to our community as a roadmap and guide for the coming year. We encourage you to listen, really listen, and heed the advice and warnings offered because we must. Again, thank you for being with us tonight, and know that we are going to call upon you throughout the year to join us in celebration, in resistance, and reclamation. With that, let me introduce Olo Obatala Marinieves Alba, and I wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Bendiciones, Boruboya y Bocheche, bendición santeros, mayores, menores, Iworo, Aboricha, and all of our community joining us from across the world. We invite you actually as we begin to tell us in the chat what city, what state, what country you're joining us from. In honor of the center's 50th anniversary, we thought that it would be important to begin our conversation today by grounding ourselves in the history of the Letra del Año. As we know, in the age of social media, there are always multiple, often conflicting or competing sources, and whoever sort of is the first to get the worm or get the word out is often perceived to be the most accurate or the most authentic. And so we actually are going to dig back before we actually start to begin our discussion of La Letra. We're going to just talk about the origins of La Letra, beginning with Remigio Herrera Obaramegi Adechina, an African-born Oluwo who was a mentee of Ño Carlos Adebi. And well, first introduce our very esteemed panel. And then I'm going to invite Baba Frank Bell, Oba Oriate, and Baba Dani Rodriguez, to kind of ground us a little bit in the history and the lineages, the different lineages that actually inform the Lucumí Letra del Año. We want to recognize that in Yoruba land, in Nigeria, and Benin, the Odu for the year is taken mid-year in June. And so this is a Lucumi event that we are very pleased and very honored to share with all of the folks from across the diaspora who honor the Yoruba tradition as it is practiced in Cuba and its diaspora across, of course, the United States, the Caribbean, and the entire world. And so with that, I'm going to first invite to join us Baba John McCoy Ogundawo, priest of Asesu, our earliest scribe. One of the reasons that, one of the many reasons that we invited Baba John to join us was that he's the first of our elders to actually help to disseminate the Letra del Año in the United States. And we're talking pre-internet, typewriter days. And it's always such a pleasure to have him with us for both his memory, his historical importance, his spirit, and of course, his wisdom. I also want to invite Baba Raymond Crawford, joining us from El Templo Bonifacio Valdez, priest of my father, Obatala. Another one of our esteemed elders who has not only worked and been initiated and built community in the Lucumí community in the United States, but who has also received initiations and titles in Yoruba land. He is titled Chief Bamigbodu Awo Agbaye. He's also received Olofi in the Cuban tradition and Odu from the late Araba of Ile-Ife. So we are very, very pleased and honored as always to have Baba Ray joining us this evening. I'd like to invite Daniel Babi, Dani Rodriguez, our Oba Oriate, our eldest priest of Chango, on this call, joining us from the People's Republic of New Jersey as well. Another one of our sort of homegrown historians, I'll say, right? It's really important, as we know, that because our tradition, we live in sort of the age of the proliferation of writings, some accurate, some not, all widely disseminated through the internet now. It's actually really important that our tradition is grounded in oral history and other histories that are increasingly documented. And Danny has dedicated, similar to our next panelist, Baba Frank Bell, another Oniye Maya, who has been initiated for over 26 years. And was also a historian and had the privilege of working as a librarian at the National Library in Cuba in the School of Arts, of Fine Arts. And so we're very, very pleased as always to have Baba Frank Bell, who many of you know from his channel Ochareo. And from Puerto Rico, we have joining us Baba Joseph Carol Miranda, right? Baba Joseph has been with us now several years, I would say maybe 3 or 4 years. He is a sort of a dedicated leader within the community here in Puerto Rico, and has really, brought the voice of another generation of oluwos into our conversation. And we're very happy that this is a multi-generational dialogue, and a dialogue that invites, the participation of brothers and sisters and siblings of all genders into our community discussion, into our cabildo, into our village. So we're very pleased to have Aworumila Oyekumbi Kalomi Olochun, Joseph Carol Miranda. And this year, and we want to give a special shout out to our brother Ramin Corazani, who is not with us this year because he's making big moves in the world in Florida. But we have a new brother joining us, Xavier Pagang, Baba Onyi Ifa Omi, also joining us from the East Coast, from New Jersey, another Olo Obatala, who is going to sort of join us as our youngest Oluwo on the panel this evening. So I'd like you all to give them a warm welcome. I'd like to invite Baba Frank and Baba Danny to begin. And I'm going to invite Baba Frank first, right, to kind of start we often, and I've begun this panel many, many times, reminding us all that the Letra del Año, that is sort of the oldest in contemporary times, is the letter. And there are two, and Baba Danny's going to talk a little bit about this, but there's the oldest continuous letter, and then there's also the sort of the community that is the root community of the practice of the Odu, of the Letra del Año, which is the community of La Casona del 10 de Octubre in Cuba, La Casa de Miguel Febles Padrón. And that house, while it has not been the longest, the most continuous letter, is the house that carries the tradition of Remigio Herrera Adechina or Barameyi, the African-born oluwos. So I'm going to invite Baba Frank first to just tell us a little bit about the history of the letra from that perspective. That is the letra that we're going to center in our conversation, but it is not the only letra. The other thing that I want to say about the letra is we get tons of requests and questions and inquiries from across the community of like, well, which letra do I follow? And which is the most important? And which is the most accurate? Well, in fact, as you know, and we have said to you many times before, and for those of you that are joining us for the first time, we will say to you again, the letra that is most important for each of us is our very own letra. So that might be the letras that you have in your itang. That might be the letras that you receive in your readings from the year, either from your oluwos or from your godparents who read you with the Merindilogun, right? Your personal letter is your letter. The reason that the Caribbean Cultural Center continues to host this particular conversation is because there are communities of people, and in the case of the Letra de la Casona, the intention and the gathering and the many rituals that precede the pulling of this odu is intended to read the climate, the temperature, and sort of all of the conditions that we're going to be facing as a human family, as a globe, as an earth, as a planet, as a whole world. And so when you read the Letra del Año from La Casona, it says, para Cuba y el mundo. So this is a letter that certainly will forecast the conditions of Cuba, the physical place where it is sort of pulled, and its intention is that it is for the world. That said, there are many houses across the diaspora that don't necessarily follow these letters. One of the trends that we have found in our discussions is that often the conditions, the warnings, the forecasts that we've received in these letras have actually been quite accurate in helping to sort of forecast the things that we're going to confront in the year ahead. So whether you approach this as an academic exercise or whether you approach this as a religious sort of a point of religious awareness, a religious dialogue, we encourage you to enter this discussion with curiosity, with respect, and also with openness to receive the word of Ifa from across many communities, beginning in Cuba, and then we'll travel to New Jersey and Puerto Rico, and we'll talk a little bit about Miami, which is one of the other very prominent letters pulled in the United States. And then we'll urge you to draw your own conclusions, defer to your elders, and also for those of you, we're aware that there are many people in our community who do not yet have elders, right? Simply hope that you'll take this as a seed of consciousness as you approach the year ahead. So with that, I'd like to invite Baba Frank Bell, que nos comience con un historial de la letra del año a base de tu investigación. You know, please share with us, based on your research when you were in Havana, a little bit about the letra del año, beginning with Remigio Herrera Adechina, who was a mentee of Ño Carlos Adebí.
Audio here. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you and congratulations for the 50th anniversary to the Caribbean Cultural Center. And also, you know, Mari Nieves and Marta Morena Vega, that she is my mentor too. So she was the person that encouraged me to do this job for the community. So thank you, Marta Moreno Vega, always. Today, I'm going to talk with you to start the live stream about the history of the letter of the year, because now there are so many documents out there and the people don't know about it. So they want to be the first and don't know that this man that you see here, Remigio Herrera or Baramelli, well known like at the China, he was the founder and the creator of the letter of the year with Atandá and Ogundafumbo Tata Gaitán and other babalawos in 1800. The letter of the year is just to guide and protect the community. That's why he did that. He was so successful and everyone support him. The community worked together and for 226 years without skip any of them, always that organization do the letter of the year. After him, when he passed away, está Tata Gaitán, his grandson, and after Bernardo Rojas, Irete Ontendí. Irete Ontendí Onichango. Bernardo Rojas, he did a great job because he kept the letter of the year alive. Even though he was discriminated and he had a lot of problems with the government and others, he continued the tradition. When he passed away, start Don Miguel Febles Padrón or Dicá. The Miguel Febles, he went know because he create and recreate different voices in Ifá and made all the babalawos work together. Also, he moved the letter of the year from Marianao to La Casona, the place that today we celebrate the letter of the year. And in addition of that, to let you know, the letter of the year in Cuba during the years before, they give the letter of the year on December. Was Miguel Febles that moved the letter of the year for January 1st. This is something else. But it's so important to know that all the letters of the year around the world are important for the community. It depends on the place that you live, but we need to respect the letter because it's the mother of all of them. Because of the migration of Cubans to another countries and people that went to Cuba to learn about this ceremony, is that now we have this ceremony in every single place, but behind the scene, they are great babalawos. They are people from the community that support and work with them. So even though I follow always the letter of the year of the Casona, I defend that letter. I protect this tradition because it's something that I grow up with it. It's important that you pay attention or your own letter that like Marinieve said. What happened? That this letter came with Ofunabe. Ofunabe talk about respect because Ofunabe the respect Babalu Aye and he didn't want to listen his advice and he lost his life. And in addition of that, the first witness Ogun Damasa bring the Osobo. And Ogun Damasa said that together we do better. So it's important to be together. It's important to support each other. This, the Caribbean Cultural Center do for a lot of years is so important. Why? Because all of us have different information and we can apply them to our life. For example, the person that has crown Ogun, this is the year of Ogun. We have Ogun double in Cuba, with Ofunabe Ogun with Oya in the Association Yoruba, Ogun with Ochun, in Miami, Ogun Dache, Ogun with Ochun. So Ogun, for me, is the king this year. And he has also Ochun and Oya. That all of us must know that Ochun and Oya, they are Okanani, one heart. In any place that Ochun is, Oya is there too. So we have the balance between the work of Ogun, because Ogun is the owner of the metal, technology, everything that talk about construction in our life, Ogun is there. But we have the sweetness of Ochun to sweet our life in different places, and also Oya to remove every bad wind that we could have around. So
And so, Baba
it's
Frank,
so important for us. And ya tú sabes.
vamos a
Oh, Chareo. Thank you, Marineve.
I love Baba Frank, always gets passionate. He goes deep, and then we have to come bring him back so we can come back to the sort of our next historian. But gracias mil, Baba Frank, because
Okay, you're
one of
welcome.
the
My pleasure.
really one of the really important things about the history, and we're gonna kind of talk about another lineage in Cuba that's really also very old, and some of the other lineages, as we hear from el Templo Bonifacio Valdez, that's also celebrating its 50th anniversary, as we hear from el Templo Omorisha in Puerto Rico, is that and I hope, we live in a society, in a world, in a global culture now where people are used to sort of consuming culture, right? And so while we may all be followers, practitioners, priests, and such, it's very important that we remember the point of origin of our tradition. And so it's first Yoruba land, it's Benin, it's Nigeria, Togo even, and it's in the Lucumí tradition, it's Cuba, right? It's extremely important that we remember that we have land-based traditions. So while they are disseminated widely, and even across Cuba, there is diversity in practice. The religion, the tradition belongs to a place, and it belongs to or stems from, is rooted in the ancestors of that place, and is then carried across the world, right? And so I'm going to invite Baba Danny to talk a little bit about the history of the letra en Palmira, right? Que diga, bueno, sí, en Palmira, el Cabildo de Palmira, because that's another lineage that has a sort of a long-standing tradition and a long-standing continuous tradition. The reason that we decided to sort of begin with this year is because there are many sort of, as we said, there are often contentions and there's often confusion more than anything. I think why we come together as a community for this discussion every year is to bring clarity, to bring awareness, to bring wisdom and shared understanding, since that is ultimately what is going to carry us forward, right? Baba Frank talked about Ogunda Masa, right? This is a year where unity is really supremely important. And, in terms of Cuba, and this is a very important clarification I want to make, La Asociación Cultural Yoruba is a government sanctioned and authorized organization, which also pulls the Letra del Año, right? So you'll hear that Ogun and Oya are ruling in La Casona, and they are ruling, Ogun and Ochun are ruling in La Asociación Cultural Yoruba. The reason that this is historically and socially important for us and for Cubans, especially that live in Cuba, is that the government sanctioned organization is the one that is authorized to speak first, right? So most people are going to hear that Odu before they hear the letter that is historically older, right? So these are sort of important technical things that we want to bring your awareness to so that they can help you to decide what you're aligned with. I mean, the other thing that's really important that we're going to bring later in the discussion is what the relationships between all of these Odu are, right? Because as we've discovered many times before, there are trends and patterns that are emerging in all of the Odu, and many of the Odu have actually been repeated for many years now, right? So one of the testigos this year in the Casona Odu is Baba Eyogbe, which we've probably been hearing about for 7 years now. So with that, and in the spirit of what Frank said, which is respect and shared understanding, and then sort of unifying around our collective best interest, I'm going to invite Baba Danny to talk to us a little bit about the lineage of Palmira.
Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. It's an honor to be part of this panel again. Many blessings to everyone in the new year, and happy anniversary to the center. This is a great opportunity that we can all come together and we talk about our beliefs, our culture, our heritage. And I think events like this are vital for the community and vital for our survival. I want to talk a little bit about the letter that's also disseminated in Palmiras. Palmiras is another region in Cuba, and they have a society. A society is a little different from a cabildo. They register almost like Freemasons. It's registered, and it's in Palmiras. It's called the Cristo, La Sociedad Cristo. And recently, there's been an effort to kind of restore it because it was in ruins for many years. Even though it was continued to operate, it was pretty much in ruins. So many people got together, me being one of them, and we tried to collect money to send over there to kind of put the walls back up and the ceiling, etc. So they're continuing to make some changes there and repairs. But their letter has been around since 1913. While it's not the origin of the letter of the year, because it was Adechina, it is one of the letters that has been the continuous, and uninterrupted. That particular sociedad, that society, for mutual benefit, those things were very popular, and in the diaspora, was run by the Sevilla family. And today, there's still the descendants of the Sevilla family who continue to operate. So this particular Odu also was very popular, and people also would use that. But as Maria Nieves mentioned, the government in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken, the Asociación Cultural, since it's a government-run operation, their Odu was allowed to be disseminated first. Well, we know the original one was La Casona, and some people didn't even get to see the one from Palmiras if you didn't have any communication with them at all. So the idea of different areas pulling, looking for different Odu, looking for different advice, it's just like almost like what we're doing today. And we can see that it was even done in Cuba at one point. People are looking to see their surroundings and to kind of, again, gauge the temperature, as was said already, to see what they can do in their communities to make their lives easier. I remember as a child, because I grew up in this religion, why I'm not from Cuba, and I didn't grow up in Cuba, but I've been in this religion since I opened my eyes. And all of my life, we waited anxiously for December 1st for La Letra del Año, and we would say, what did Cuba say? And living here in the United States, all my elders and everybody around me would say, what did Cuba say? Because the idea of La Letra del Año was for the world, right? And we would anxiously wait that who's ruling. That was also another common question that everybody asked. Who's ruling this year? What Orisha this year? What's the flag look like? So this has been an ongoing tradition forever, and it's taken. I think it's grown so much that that's where the confusion comes in. Ultimately, everybody has to follow their elders and do what's good for themselves and get your own reading and your own divination, but adhere to what is being said with these different signs, these different odus or letras, right? Because there's a lot of crossover. So Palmiras right now just fixed up, like I was saying, their center. They had a big group of people, though they had babalawos from different traditions, from the Sheshe tradition as well, be part of that divination. So it was nice to see the unity there. And later on, as we go, I'll talk about what came out in that Odu and make the comparison to the other ones that are here as well.
Thank you, Danny. And so, as Danny says, what did they say in Cuba? We have the great privilege and honor of having Baba John, who is not only one of our eldest oluwos, but was actually historically one of our scribes, right? One of our scribes in the diaspora in the United States, who through his Ifa house was able to carry the word from Cuba to the rest of us. So Baba John, I want to invite you now to kind of lead us to sort of set off this discussion on, we're talking Ifa, and we have oriates on the call, but we have 4 oluwos on this call who are initiated and trained, right, to interpret Ifa. So Baba John, we start the year, we've already have one question in the chat. What's the sign? I didn't get it. So La Casona de Miguel Febles, La Casona del 10 de Octubre, pulled, which is again the oldest letter, pulled Ofunabe, which is Ofun Eyogbe, Ogunda Masa, which is Ogunda Osa, and Baba Eyogbe, which is Eyogbe Meyi. Baba John, what does this first tell us about your tradition and your history of scribing for us so many moons ago, pre-internet, but also bring us into this conversation. What are these Odu telling us about 2026?
These letters are very interesting because, as what was discussed before, in terms of you've got Ogunda, you got Oya, Ogun Oya from Miguel Feble Padron house, who I'm associated with through the House of Marquette. And a lot of them are good friends of mine now, Lazaro, Costa Valdez, Iguodi Bofun, you know, they're all take the letter out from over there at his house for there in Cuba. And I had also joined the museum over there in Havana. That's the other one, take out the other letter. So now they come out with the Ogun Ochun. It's interesting because, yeah, I always tell everybody when you're doing with letters of the year on as far as just what Bobby said. Yeah, back in the day, it was what was the letter from Cuba? That was it. That was the main thing that was going. That's what everybody wanted to know. But still, just like now, in the letters we have also in our own areas and communities and stuff, it's good to go and get your own reading from your Oba, from your babalawos. Get your own individual reading. The letters of the year from Cuba, basically it sets the tone for everything that's going on right now. You know, all that Ogunda, like a hotbed down there in the Caribbean. And then 48 hours later, after the letters came out, boom, they invaded Venezuela. So that told you everything right there. Ray Charles could read that one. So, like I said, you know, in the beginning, my motto is whether you're in the religion or you're not in the religion, do a bow, lay low. Bottom line, do some kind of cleaning, even if it's go to church, you know, some white flowers and clean yourself, light a candle and pray. But do some kind of thing. You have to take care of you and yours. That's basically what all the letters are saying nowadays. Respect. Definitely respect. Respect your elders in the religion. Respect your elders in your family. Respect the elders in the community. We have to do things collectively, whether we had discussed prior in terms of collectively, yes, we have to do things. We have to clean ourselves. That's the only way you're going to really get over the way things are now. As we were talking earlier, things are tight. You know, things are very tight. You know, and these letters here that we had just talked about, like I said, that whole thing talks about take care of you and yours. It's very, very important. Take care of you and yours. When you get letters like a Gunda Drupa, you know, this is where you got to take care of your health. This is where the woman has to take care of her health, got to take care of her insides and stuff like that. Get your two of the Nikos and, you know, you get the yoke base. You have to take care of your health. Okay? Egun is running rampant. Egun ran rampant, sure enough, for 2025, especially for us in our camp. It jumped off crazy in the beginning, and then everything was smooth for the rest of the year. And then as we coming into the holidays, boom, then everybody started dropping like flies. All kind of freak accidents. And it wasn't people dying of old age. It was young people. So that tells you something. You have to pay attention. The people, again, in this letter here, this is where people kind of like faded away or didn't believe in whatever. Always remember something in this culture that we're in, whether you believe or not, as they say in that letter, where they threw a rule in the river, oriate and stuff like that. Ocha are always watching you. Ocha watching you. Ancestors always watching you. That's very, very important. You don't think they are, but they always watching you. How many times some oriates and babalawos come over readings, they come out with things in terms of what you think you're doing, you think nobody watching. Hey, your ancestors are watching. And you go to one of us, they're going to tell on you. This way you got to get straight. You got to do the things you need to do. Do the right thing. That is basically the main thing. Back in my day, I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi. There was a time where it's like I was the youngest kid, and I'm trying to get to Spanish, even though I played with Latin orchestras, but I'm the youngest kid there in the late 70s, early 80s, trying to write down the letters of the year. It was in Delphine's house. And computer was just coming out. It was the size of a TV set, and when I'd write everything down, I'd type it all up on the computer. I get home, and then I would send it out. When I send it out, I start getting a response back from other scribes, from other houses, from Boston, from Chicago, from LA, from Mexico City, from Cali, Colombia, from Cuba. I always stayed in touch with them. From Nigeria, from London. And this is how we all used to stay together, stay in communication with each other back in the day. And then for some strange reason, once when, I guess computers got a little more sophisticated and the elders, they started dying off. Kind of lost that kind of communication. Same thing I was talking with some santeros about back in the other day when it came into you got your warriors or you did stuff like that. You was encouraged to study this, to do this and do that, do the other. And it seemed like I went away and came back and all of a sudden everything was different. No, you can't do nothing without your godmother. No, you can't do this without your godfather. And it's like, well, I got the original papers from Francisco and Pancho Morta, how you did stuff when they gave you things. So it's more or less like study, get back into yourself, sit down, get to know on as far as the things you have to do relating to your ancestors and your traditions. That's what the Caribbean Cultural Center is for. Like I said, back in the day, when Steve Berrios and myself and a couple of the other guys and Julito Collazo used to go over there. Used to be down there on 57th Street, back in the day. That was a big thing. I think y'all was going, and then I think the East was going back over there on Claver Place in Brooklyn. And that was only two cultural things that were going on at the time. And it was great to see you all still here 50 years later. Like I said, I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi now. You all are an institution. Should really celebrate something very big this year.
Thank
But
you.
those are things that happen. So
Thank you, Baba. And you are an institution that we are very blessed and privileged and grateful to have. I want, some of the themes, and I'm going to start with La Casona and La Asociación Cultural Yoruba. We have themes of, and Baba John started to talk about this, and Baba Frank and Baba Danny. We have themes around medical care, actually, our physical health, the health of our nervous systems, our digestive systems, our reproductive systems for my people with wombs and uteri. We have lots of warnings around natural disaster, safety in rivers and oceans. And alcoholism, interestingly, is something that shows up in both La Casona and also in La Asociación Cultural Yoruba, right? So there's a lot here, and there's also a lot of warning around care for the home, safety, right? Violence, and violence particularly among young people. Over the last 3 years, we've heard a lot of warnings around the importance of strengthening and the core of the family unit, right? So taking care of families and children and protecting children. And this year we're hearing about potentially incremental growth of violence among our young people, right? And the importance of protecting and guarding our homes and our families. So Baba Raymond, I'd like to invite you to sort of reflect. I know that you pulled the letra en el Templo Bonifacio Valdez. If you could tell us a little bit about that letter, which is taken here in the United States, in New Jersey, and if you see any relationship or connections between the letra en el Templo de Bonifacio Valdez and some of the messages that we received from Cuba.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. This is a very important time. 50 years marks a time and an event that began 50 years ago and now culminates here with us speaking and being able to speak to a number of people who would like to know a little bit more about the religion. Yes, we get different letters from different places. And that's becomes very interesting. We have to give homage to Cuba because that's where our tradition comes from. Different people were mentioned who are founders of our religion. It was mentioned Pancho Mora was probably the first babalawo in New York City. He gave me warriors. Pancho Mora was the man who sort of let me sort of study with him and this mystery of doing divinations for young people, older people. And I thank him for that experience. Now, as time goes by and each community comes up with a letter of the year, there causes some confusion, understandably. But ultimately, and I hope it's been mentioned in some kind of way, the most important reading is between you and your padrino, you and the person, when that person sits down in front of you. That's the most important. But not everybody gets that opportunity. And so we get the letter of the year from Cuba. And yes, even though I mentioned that we concentrate on New Jersey and Puerto Rico, wherever you live, we always look to Cuba. And Cuba, when they solve all the problems that they have, many of our problems will be solved also. Same sort of things. There's a concentration on what family gives you the strength to move on, to survive. And if we ignore that factor, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. Yes, there's violence everywhere. Everyone is talking about violence, whether it's in Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, even Minneapolis. So we have to deal and learn to deal with problems and issues that occur in our community. My concentration is New York, New Jersey, but understandably, I have feelings for what's happening in Miami. I have feelings what's happening in Havana. And so we are able to communicate a lot more. We didn't know anything more about other places because we couldn't communicate. We didn't know what was happening in Chicago or Los Angeles, but now we are closer. And one of the things that come out in our house, which is Bonifacio Valdez in New Jersey, is an Odu that speaks Osaude, which speaks about knowing the value of things. We have to look for a general truth that works for everyone. And one of the important things in life is to be able to evaluate things, not by people who study Osaude say that many people know the price of things, but they don't know the value of things. And that very important issue comes up in every situation, whether it's from country to country or person to person. We sometimes give a lot of issue to people who have and people who don't have. And what this Odu says to you is that you have to learn, we have to share, we have to give, but we have to have value in what we're giving. A person who doesn't know the value of what they have will give it away right away. A person who believes that they have something very important or tend to hold on to it. Let me talk about a little, as you get older, people come to your house and they say, why don't you get rid of that? And, or throw that away, you don't need it. And so what happens is you have to learn that particular thing has value. Do not throw it away, do not give it away. And that comes in terms of money, it comes in terms of information, it comes in terms of support, but you have to have value and understand value. And that's one of the important things of Osaure, which has so many different angles to solve things. And so I would look to Cuba and see what Cuba is doing, what they have to say about life, because believe me, they're going through some things that we many times go through on a personal level. The new year is a time of renewal. It's a time when everyone starts to say, we could do better. And that's what the importance of the Odus that come out each year. It brings you closer to your family. It says, let me go and see and talk to my padrino. Let me talk to the elders and see how we can make this coming year a little better. And with that, we study and we must acknowledge the different Odus that come out in different areas. Whether it's Miami, I'm interested. I want to know. Whether it's Puerto Rico, I'm interested. Brazil, and obviously here in New York, we have our special issues. And as on a personal level, it's my responsibility to help my, I almost said children, but my ahijados, my godchildren, to work better. And I do see improvement. I'm glad, but unity as posited in Ejiogbe is very important. We must come together because in the unity is strength. And that's Ogunamasa. So I welcome the contributions of everyone, and I look forward to this program. And thank you for watching.
So, Baba Raymond, do you want to share with us briefly who were the reigning Orisha in the Templo Bonifacio Iles?
Yes, I'll share it.
And your reigning Odu?
Shango and Ochun. It was an explanation about family because in our tradition, you know that Shango and Ochun don't always get together, don't always agree. It's not the perfect example, but one of the important studies for everyone that I suggest is the life and the journey that Shango has taken. And I want to share something, if anything, in Saure, which is the sign Osa Otura, which came out in Jersey. And one of the things talks about why Shango goes and looks for his father, why he did so. We know that he did. He found out that Obatala and Yemaya were not his parents. But in Osaori tells is something I learned. It says that that was the secret of Obatala. He didn't want to tell Shango that Yemaya and Obatala were not his father and mother. And so I learned a word in Spanish, mimar, that might be translated So Shango grew up pampered, and so much so that Ogun, who was the actual son of Obatala and Yemaya, became jealous and wanted to know why this young man was so much pampered, more than he. And eventually he found out, and eventually he used it against Shango and told him, "They're not your father and mother." And with that, that began the journey that Shango went to look for who his father was. Many people say, "I got you," but that little bit of piece is not well known, and that came out in Osaude. Tanto tiene, tanto vale. You are understood and to be somebody if you have somebody. If you don't have something, if you don't have anything, you're nobody. That's how people think. So that means don't give away everything you have. You have to learn to hold on to things and value things, and that's the real essence of everything. Understanding the value of things, not the price, but the value, and that's Osaode. There's more, but I could go on. But
We'll bring you back for more. Don't worry, we have time.
okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's really important. Baba John began talking about sort of the importance of, the Orisha are watching, right? And there are several Odun that were pulled that talk about integrity, right? And doing things correctly and treating people well because it's the right thing, not only because it's the right thing to do, which is the principal thing, but also because that will actually generate success and prosperity, right? Doing the right thing is what generates success and prosperity. We also have this theme of unity. We have this theme. Baba Danny was talking about Palmira and, gave us some history on La Sociedad de Palmira, and Baba Frank was talking about La Casona. Our culture, our religion, we practice a religion that's part of a broader culture, a broader tradition, and it is historically built on, as many of our ocha houses or iles or temples, it's built on mutual aid, right? So we have Ogunda Masa also reminding us that we are better together. I like to invite Baba Joseph from the Templo Omoricha in Puerto Rico to talk about, their letter and kind of restate some of these themes. The other thing, Baba Joseph, I'd like you to talk a little bit about is that in several of the Odu, there are reminders that Ori is very important. Our mind, our consciousness. Ori is our first Orisha, right? Our consciousness is our first guide before divination. We're all born with it, whether we're initiated or not. And there is some sort of, esto está recalcado, right? This is restated in different Ojo, the importance of having good heads and following our Ori. So I would like to invite you to talk to us about sort of all of these themes and sort of and share with us what came out in Puerto Rico.
Sure thing. Buenas noches. Good evening. Happy half a century anniversary. 50 sounds a lot, but half a century sounds more impressive. So, a lot of happy anniversary for the half a century worth of history and trajectory. It's not a small thing. It's not a small feat. I'm gonna interweave some of the things, but I wanna start with Cuba en la Casona, with Ofunalbe and a unique interpretation. Particularly is the importance of what we teach, like it talks about what we heritage, like what like we inherit we inherit the good and bad things of our parents or how we were taught about our elders, the importance of proper upbringing. And that's extremely important because we have a lot of good values that can give us what we need to keep precisely that level head. Um, it's been screaming, so I'm gonna honor an older Santera. When I was in Aleyo, gave me an advice that really shaped how I embraced this religion. And when I was before I became an oluwo, um, she saw me working, and for some reason, those of us who work like at the end of a ceremony, you're cleaning. When you're young, you're the one who like clean, do a lot of stuff and all that. And she saw something. I don't know what it was, but she saw something. She go, "Mijo, I wanna let you know. I know you're gonna do." She knew I was gonna go towards Ifa, and she goes, "Make sure you learn, um, how to solve how to cómo resolver how to solve with a glass of water and a candle." Um, and that just it took me afar. And that is something to this day in terms of some of the values that um I try to instill in my community in terms of the importance of establishing that connection that we have with Olodumare, um, and through Ori, through a proper Ori, is that we can have that connection. I say this because even though Ogunda Masa talks about uh, their strength in unity, it also talks about the loss of purpose. We call Ogunda Masa Ogunda Atravesado, which means there's a unique story within that says where Ogun lost the purpose. He did not want to walk the road of life, so he embarked in the road of death, and that's very significant because Ogun is governing. So it's very important to have a very clear head that our decisions and everything that we do embraces life and protects life, and not it's not a crash course into destruction. Ogun, we associate him with being like a heavy warrior, but it's also the one who cuts, creates a path where it doesn't exist. It creates something new. So it's gonna be very interesting how all of this manifests because he's the path maker, um from even like from cosmic from the celestial realm to the earth. He created the path that the Irumiles use to come into earth, and he also is the one who creates that path in the mountain. So that this is something that is not a small thing. And then with Eyobe, it talks about the importance of using the head so our head does not roll on the ground, because originally Ori was rolling. It did not have its place in the body. And was through divination, through Orula, that he did it, bo, and followed the advice of Orula, where he became the head of things. And that is why when we do ceremonies within the context of FIFA, everybody has to kneel in a unique way, like the Muslims do, where we put the head on the ground, and that is just a recognition of that moment of gratitude when the head was on the ground and it got out of the ground, and it has stayed off the ground because of that. So it's the importance of that reverence, the humbleness, that strong connection is gonna be extremely important. On a side note, of Funadbe, and now with the information I heard about Osa Ore, a lot of health issues, but particularly the stomach, the intestines, is something that needs to be very we have to be very mindful within that. But at the same time, Ofunnabe talks about where the body fluids wanted to see who was the one who's going to prevail. And that is where the power of sperm has to fecundar. Um, uh, eh, so so it's also the big like it's also life giving. Is those who were not able to have children will like it talks about like the birth of something when there wasn't the conditions to do so. Ofunabe represents that, like the birth of something new, or the fecundation of something new, which is something like it's a good thing to look out and be watchful. But what creates the havoc of that coming into fruition is the fact of the alcohol consumption. That is a huge taboo within Ofunabe. There's a lot of stories, and in terms of relationships, the emotional chantaje, um, which is you have people telling each other secrets, and the violation of trust and things like that, things to avoid. I want to add, in the context of Puerto Rico, we came with a sign called Oche Paure. which also has a very strong spiritual connection, specifically with Egun is very strong in this sign. It talks about the doors in heaven, the importance of the virtues against the non-virtues. And so that strong connection with the proper behavior and the proper etiquette is fundamental. I want to share a story, particularly from Ochepaure, that weaves very perfectly with everything that has been set up to this point. And there's a story within Ochepaure that talks about way back when Ori, Orumila, Oshanla, Osain, were in the earth, and they were all doing good alone by themselves, but yet they were struggling with feeling hollow inside. It talks about feeling empty within, and this is Ori, Orula, Osain, uh, and Oshanla. And so they go for divination. And then in this process, they Orula told them that you need to step out of your comfort zone. You're doing okay, but you're missing. And the fact that you feel hollow inside is because you're meant to work together and you're not working together. And in the moment you start working together towards this aim, because they all wish to be in the place of perfect bliss, like the perfect ide, like and where everything, there's nothing missing, and none of these Irumulas were at that point. And it says the only way you're gonna get to that perfect blessing is when you join your forces together. So Ori is associated with destiny, okay? Um, Oshanla in this case is associated with patience. The Orumila is associated with the prayer. Oshun, I forgot to mention her. Oshun is the owner of freshness, coolness, of the coolness of things, and Osain is deliverance. So they say you need to put these qualities together that you all have in order to achieve that space of perfect blessing. But they say you need to put into practice this new element, which is called patience, which is an offspring of Olodumare. So, and then when you do the above, it has to be so big, so bountiful that it will be enough not only for yourselves, but for everything that lives within Earth and within the universe. And so they started working together, and sure enough, as soon as they started working together, the result was that not only did they resolve their problems, but everybody within Earth and the realm of Earth and the realm of the universe, that they felt completely fulfilled. And that sense of feeling being completely fulfilled is a state of coolness, that how cool and the relief it feels when we reach that state. So that goes again connecting to these old espiritistas and santeras, right? Like this is nothing new in in the perspective of espiritismo, because that's why we have that famous prayer called Fe, Esperanza y Caridad, the importance of caridad, right? Of doing that work that goes beyond yourself, and by working for the community, with and for the community, in that collaborative sense, um, it will uplift everybody in such a way that everybody's gonna feel good, everybody's gonna heal, everything's gonna feel a lot better for everybody. Um, and so in that sense, is I think is the message is very clear of the type of work that needs to be done in order to reach that ideal state. Everybody wants to feel that that coolness that represents that I mean, I know it's cold over there, but if it's hot, there's nothing better than a nice cold glass. I don't know if this is like a good reference for you all in the East Coast right now, but when it's hot, like there's nothing better than a soothing cold glass of water when you're working a lot and it's really hot. And I think in terms as a metaphor, like humanity needs that cool, refreshing drink of that life-giving water that comes when we honor we honor God, Olodumare, God, the Oriumeles, the Orishas, and our ancestors. Is the end result when we do what we were supposed to be doing all along. And it goes back to those values that we've inherited as a community. Like we are collective, of a collective and collaborative community than straight individualism. We were taught differently. We position ourselves differently. We do things differently when we work with as a community, and that is the freshness, the refreshing presence of divine presence and being in symphony with Olodumare. And I think that is the message is use that and then also be ingenious, right? You have hard times, create something. If it don't exist, make it happen. Create that path. Embrace Ogun as everybody refers to them as this warrior, which he is, but I think we need to tap more into Ogun in terms of being ingenious, ingenuity. I always think like who plays with metal to see what happens, forging metal, like how that came about for me is mind blowing. The mixing of the elements, that working with the heat, the tampering, the pounding, it's a science. He's the universe engineer, and so it's telling us work together in the right way and create the type of world we've always wanted for you. And we've given you the blueprint. You just have to tap in, work together, and make it happen as a community. And I think that's a consistent message throughout all the letras.
Thank you very much, Papa Joseph. And in that spirit, I want to just take a moment to kind of give you all who are viewing with us this evening. We have over 259 people from Jalisco, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Newark, Brooklyn, Houston, New York City, Washington, D.C., Florida, Rio Grande, Puerto Rico, Syracuse, Kissimmee, Detroit, Philly, NOLA, Louisiana, New Orleans, Jersey, Yorktown Heights, Mayapack, Atlanta, Harlem, Maryland, Jersey City, Middletown, Delaware, ATL, Boston, the Boogie Down Bronx, my cradle, Los Angeles, Savannah, Georgia, Brooklyn, Jersey City, Connecticut, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Vallejo, California, Worcester, Massachusetts, Oakland, California, Rochester, Ibadan, Nigeria, Chicago, Harlem, Westchester, Tucson, Arizona, Kingston, Jamaica in the house, and so many other folks, Cleveland, Aquile, Pennsylvania, Buenos Aires, Argentina, London in the UK, Mount Laurel, New Jersey, the Upper West Side, New Orleans. Thank you all for joining us and being here as we build this community and build this consciousness of interdependence, right? With that, I want to invite Baba Xavier Pagan, our youngest and the newest member of this illustrious panel. I'd like to offer you the opportunity, and I just want to be clear because I know the babalawos are like, me están pelando. They're like, the youngest goes first, but the youngest goes last today. I want to invite you to offer your reflections about the letra. And I want to also bring in another element. We don't have Miami with us today, and Xavier, this is for you, but this is for all of you that we're going to bring back into the conversation. In Miami, they pulled Ogundache, Oturanico, and Ogbewenye. And Ogun and Ochun were ruling. And we know that many, many elements of Oya are born in that sign. So again, there continues to be this interrelationship. So Baba Xavier, welcome. Welcome to La Letra del Año.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor having been raised by the center. I recall first going and meeting Dr. Marta Moreno Vega, who really kind of helped put me on the path in terms of understanding cultural identity and kind of what is out there at the age of 12. So we're talking 23, 24 years ago. So it's such an honor to be here to speak and to celebrate what is 50 years of continued learning and continued installation of community and all that the center has brought. One of the things that I like to do is to recognize in a rudimentary form the odu that comes out. So what we have with ofunabe is ofun and obe, right? And so with ofun, we have this idea along the evolutionary path of the odu as being the 16th, right? So we've reached a certain level. And some of the symbolism that is within that odu is that of self-realization and coming to an understanding of self at a level that will undoubtedly have us move into a next level, right? And so that's one of the concepts that we see with this Odu. We've reached a certain point, and now it's time for us to start anew. It's time for us to begin once again and potentially do things in a different way, right? So this Odu in its rudimentary form is telling us here that we've reached a point in different aspects of life that we may need to now pivot and try something new in order to get a different result and in order to continue the evolution, which is what we all seek and what Ifa is all about, evolving self, right? So that's one of the things that I kind of like to keep in mind when we're thinking about the energies that are represented by the Odu. The Orisha, although not governing, that speaks heavily within this Odu and with Ejioba and Olum is Obatala, right? And so it's this idea in this Odu where we see that Obatala makes it a personal mission to watch over the Ori and the head of each person for various reasons, but with the goal that we all fulfill the mission that we came on this earth for. And a lot of that has to do with Ori, okay? And very simply stated, when we talk about the concept of Ori, and I will borrow from the Eastern tradition where people tend to greet each other and in such a way that says that the God center in me recognizes it in you, right? And so a lot of the concepts that we find within this Odu is talking about respecting and being able to honor your elders, but also your own consciousness. Because that consciousness came with purpose. That consciousness came to do something that is unique, right? And so I just want to kind of ground that in 2 or 3 stories. In one of the stories of this Odu, there is a husband and wife who find themselves hard on their luck, and things are not working in a way that is allowing them to be fruitful and being able to have a good family life, right? And so the husband in this relationships goes for divination and is given an ebo. He fulfills the ebo, and things start to change. And his wife looks and says, okay, well, there's change happening there. I'm going to do the same ebo that my husband did, and let's see what happens. And what she found was more loss, right? And so there are a lot of concepts to be extracted from that. And it goes back to the idea, and one of the sayings in this Odu is that no Ori should be compared to someone else's. Okay? When we go to imitate and we don't honor our particular path, we tend to fail, right? So another lesson that we see in this is the need for renegotiations in our relationships and our partnerships, especially at home. I think we are, in an era where there can be ambiguity long term when it comes to where relationships are going and potentially not giving into the commitment aspect of it, right? And this Odu tells us that we need to renegotiate the people that we are sharing time with and the people that we're choosing to walk this path with to see if we are both being able to support where we're going. So again, this happens at the home base, right? Another story that we see in this Odu, and again, it centers around the idea of relationships, is Orumila having a daughter. Her name was Ifafun Milayo, right? And she was getting prepared to be married off, and she went and she got married and moved in with her husband, who was also a priest. But in moving in, she happened to see there was kind of a lax when it came to spiritual stimulation and the practice of Ifa and tradition. And with that, she saw that many things were not progressing in her life and in her marriage and in the home that she was sharing it in with her husband, right? And so divination was performed, and it was stated that she had not been paying attention enough to her ifa. She had not been paying attention to the things that helped get her to the point that she is at now. So that echoing idea that there are things that we have grown up on. There is wisdom in what has been given to us that we have to garner some of that light that was given to us either by parents or the ancestral wisdom. That's what it's speaking to there. Ancestral wisdom that we need to take with us in order to see goodness in our lives, right? And so when we're thinking about what this Odu is talking about, take a second, remember, inquire with the elders who are still living, inquire and find out about the things that either your elders in your family and in your tradition have done and have done in times past to anchor them, to be a light for them in their life. Okay, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And one of the things that this Odu speaks to us is that we don't need to do that. We have a body of wisdom that can help us weather the storms of what happens in life. There's this idea that there's nothing new under the sun, right? It's just a matter of how do we garner the proper wisdom in that moment to be able to take on what is happening, right? So these are concepts that we want to kind of keep in mind. Respecting and honoring the Orid that we have. We all come with a mission. It is that spark of our God self, right? That we come to this earth to do something specific. I think that's important too when we think about, especially with young people, right? As they're trying to find their way in the world, they're often looking outwards and needing to grasp at something when there are two things that can help them. And one of the things that the Odu says is reflect on yourself. What are your gifts? What are the things that speak to your soul? Because again, every Ori is different and it's come here to express itself in its unique way, right? So this idea of, I'm either plugged into social media or I want to be this, I want to be that. Take a second to reflect with your own consciousness about what you want to do in this world that may be unique, right? And so that's one of the aspects that is important there. And again, checking in with your elders and keeping to the traditions that helped you, right? There are so many things that, and I know that people who get to an age that is a bit older, they remember, oh, I remember when my father did that, and I'm becoming my mother, right? There are these core things that were helpful, that helped sustain us, that we could use as we go forward in life. A big aspect, as we see across the Odus with Ogunda Oturopon, is the idea of how we do things and the respect for women. One of the stories that's spoken about there is the battle between Ogun and for Oba. They had gotten into a kind of a battle, and a lot of it had to do with ego. And it happened that Oba was able to uh, defeat him. But the way in which he won the battle was not done in the right way. He used, there was an implementation to kind of cheat, right? And then he began to be aggressive, right? So it's coming back to the idea of how are we relating to each other? How are we relating in our interpersonal relationships, man, wife, and the relationships that we have that are personal. Being able to work together. Ogunda Masa, and both of the stories that I kind of just had mentioned there, if there was a unity between the husband and wife, there would be a direction that would be a lot more clear. There would be defined roles. How do I help you? How do you help me? And how do we help each other to go forward? So that always starts at home, right? That the tradition and everything that we come to know starts at our home base. The upbringing that we have religiously, our worldview starts at home. So the Sodu is speaking to us to get very defined on those things. So that way, when we step out into the world, we have a compass, we have a map, we have a knowingness of how to potentially deal with these things that are happening.
Thank you, Baba. And I think, I wanna bring, we have I said it's a beautiful question. Everyone loves this question in the Q&A box, which is, how can we begin to practice self-realization in relationship to Ori, and how do we move away from ego to allow Ori to do its work? So I just want to sort of introduce that. I said, this is very existential. This is a big question. I don't know if we're going to answer this one today, but I appreciate, Baba Xavier, that you're also bringing this matter of sort of building cohesion and alignment between parts, right? So whether it's in a matrimony, whether it's between parent and child in the Patakin of the warriors, right? Ogu in Ogunda Masa, Legua, Ogun Ochosi, they go to hunt together, but each one has a very distinct and complementary function. A lot of what we're hearing is around interdependence. It's about the relationship between things to build the whole. And it's also about, we haven't gotten into this very deeply, but Baba John started by talking about, the intervention in Venezuela, the temperature of the world, right? We're seeing the importance of sort of building collective strength that's based on individual, first and foremost, individual alignment, unique individual contributions, talents, and assets to building a whole, but building a whole that is protective, right? Building a whole that is cohesive, that is aligned, and that is in the service of, to Baba Joseph's point, is in the service of the greater good, right? And so I want to invite Baba Danny, who was going to share with us some of the reflections from the Letra de Palmira. And then we're going to open, Baba Frank, I'd love you all to just kind of start to, I introduced Miami and Ogundache, Oturanico, Ogbewenye. I'd invite us to touch on, any sort of themes from that letter. And then, I invite, of course, our viewers to start to put your questions in the Q&A box, which I will introduce little by little as we close out the last 35 minutes of our panel. So, Baba Danny.
So I'd like to start by making comparison, right, with all three of the Odus. So I will start with the theme here. We see, while we have in La Casona, Ogun is the main Orisha ruling. We also have in the Asunción Cultural, Ogun is ruling. But in Palmiras, they have Obatala or Oshun ruling. However, the Odu reflects Ogun, which is Ogun Dairoso. And the prophecy was, Ireo Elese Orumila, the blessing of prosperity monetarily. Usually when we talk about Owo, from the Yoruba word lowo, our hands, that's where it comes from, the blessing of prosperity, right, that Orumila is trying to give us, right? So it seems here, this Odu, in comparison with the rest of them, we have, like I said, a theme, and that theme is Ogun. Okay, so we take Ogun and we take the name of the Orisha and we look for the etymology of the word. O, who, Gun, conquers, wins, or stabs. All right, that's the Orisha, the force that we seem to be playing with here, via the Odu with Ogun Dairoso and Palmira, plus the Orishas who are ruling in the other two Odus. Okay, now when we look at Ogun, many people see Ogun as a force, a brute force. Okay, but Ogun is a lot more than that. Now we talk about the world, right? Right now we are actually living in real time what the Ogunda, okay, which means Ogun is good. The idea of Ogun's energy, we're living that right now. Why? Well, we're dealing with wars. We're dealing with conflicts. We're dealing with bloodshed. Okay, Ogun is the Orisha who represents iron. Iron was melted in the Iron Age, and the first thing that man made was a weapon. And the first thing that man did with that weapon was kill another man. So we're seeing that energy come forth in front of us. We're seeing the aggression from different people in the world and different political parties and different scenarios. We're seeing the misunderstandings, right? And when we play around with all three of these Odus, okay, one of the biggest themes is we need to be prepared for all things to come. Ogun Dairoso, one of the proverbs with Ogun Dairoso, false testaments, traps, and being misled. Okay, one of the lessons in Proverbs with Ofunabe, okay, loss due to not taking care of things, making sure that a fence is strong when we go to pull the ivy off of it. Think about that. Make sure your fence is strong before you go pull the ivy off of it. So that means it's a consciousness. We have to make sure before we make a move, Are we prepared to make that move in our lives? Are our surroundings ready to embrace whatever we're about to do? Okay, because if we're going to pull that ivy off the fence, we have to make sure that the fence is strong. Okay, so it's being prepared, right? It's being prepared. In the Asunción Cultural, we have Ogunda Trupo. One of the proverbs with Ogunda Trupo that lends itself to this is only an intelligent man can save himself from death. Only an intelligent man can save himself from death. Okay. Again, before we make decisions, before we pull that vine, that ivy off the fence. Okay. Let us make sure that we're looking at and examining all angles of everything that we're doing in life and the decisions that we're going to make. Okay. Because when the Iron Age came, like I said, and they began to melt metal, okay. Yes, we made farming tools. Yes, other devices were made to make our lives easier. But the first thing that man made was something to stab the other guy, all right, and to take what is his or what was hers. So we have to begin to ask ourselves, are we going to continue sitting in the same vicious circle? Alcohol is throughout all three of these odus, the consumption of alcohol. Alcohol changes personalities. They say a drunk usually tells the truth, right? So sometimes we have to start being honest with ourselves. We have to start being a little bit more reflective, the world in general, right? To be able to sustain with everything that's going on right now in the world, okay? And we cannot be overly emotional. Why? Because again, man melted iron, got angry, stabbed the other guy, okay? Alcohol. And Ofun, right? And Ofun Nabe talks about creation, where Obatala created the world with two gourds, right? So one of the many patakis we all talk about in the different manifestations of Ofun is the fact that Obatala was drinking when he was creating humanity. Obatala was drinking because he was frustrated. He was frustrated that he couldn't put the human figure together. He got frustrated. So he began to sip and sip. And before you know it, he couldn't see properly. And some eyes went over here. So, the mouth was a little twisted. Organs were missing. Okay. So we have to be careful, right? That we don't get too emotional with things and make the situation worse, right? Sometimes this is like, again, we're talking about the world, the temperature. We have to, all of these odus speak of being conscious, taking it easy, and not being so reactive. Because when you have Ogun, okay, Ogun is a force that's quick. Ogun Shoro, right? Ogun's quick. Ogun doesn't think, just happens. Okay, so we have to learn from that. So we have to be careful that we don't go too quick, that we don't react violently, whether it be violently, mentally, violently with our actions, with our words, because as we're seeing that unfold in the world, we're seeing all of that. We're seeing abrupt decisions. We're seeing quick things happen, and then we're dealing with the results later. Okay, so all three of these odus talk about that, and it's very present. So one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can see that Ifa is trying to tell us is that we need to slow down. We need to be more conscious of what's going on around us. We need not to be so reactionary, okay, whether it be verbally, physically, okay? And we need to look at all angles and make sure that that fence is strong, because when we go to pull the ivy, we might take the whole fence with us and it'll fall on us.
Thank you, Baba Danny. I think it's really interesting. I think in Palmira it was Ogunda Trupo, right?
Palmiras was Ogunda Irosun.
Ogunda Iroso, pero los dos testigos,
Los
Ogunda
dos testigos, yes, you had Ogunda Trupon, yes.
Trupo. And in la Asociación Cultural Yoruba, led with Ogunda Trupo.
Yep.
As well. Baba Frank, you know, hemos escuchado, we've heard, let me speak in English, we have translation. We've heard about Baba Xavier raise this theme of returning to ancestral practice and tradition. And for all of you who are watching, we've discussed this, and who have been with us in years past, we've discussed this matter of tending to Egun, tending to ancestors, but also returning to the traditions of our ancestors, right? So some folks in our community have converted to this tradition, but come from families that practice other traditions and may have other sources of wisdom as well. And we've heard this message about the return, or minimally the honoring of those things, right? Remembering our roots, so to speak. So Baba Frank, I want to invite you, you know, to sort of offer a reflection on this theme that I know is really important to you, but also to kind of generally offer us your reflections on all of the themes that we've touched so far in the various letras.
Who is ruling Puerto Rico? Because
Yemaya,
yo sé
Chango,
speak Chango with who?
Yemaya.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. So I asked Jose about that because I see now that Ochun is in one of the letters of Cuba in the Yoruba Association, also in New Jersey in the house of Bonifacio Valdez, also in Miami, and in Palmyra too. When we talk about Ochun, we are talking about the block. So when we talk about that, is the tradition that we have from our family also. It's important to take care of the health. All the letters talk about the stomach, the alcohol, that we need to be careful because they are transformation in our mind. But they are a patakin in Ogunda or Che in Miami that the father didn't recognize his own son, and he fought with the son because he went to the village with the mission to exterminate everyone, but he fall in love with a woman that was Ochun, and they had a relationship, and he left, but he didn't know that she was pregnant. So when Olofi saw that in that village always were people, he sent back Ogun over there, and he started to fight with his own son that he didn't know. So Ochun, she went over there and he said, you cannot fight with him because he's your son. And also explain her son to you. So this is the Odun Ogunda Che that talk about violence in the family. So it's important that the parents know the child to have communication in both areas. Not just the parent, also the child. Sometimes your child goes to study, for example, you live in New York and your child goes to Miami, and he's 16, 17 years old, and he start a life that you don't know because you are living in New York. So when your child come back, it's totally different, and start the confrontation between parents and children. So this year is important also to develop the communication. When we are talking about Ori, we need to fit this with knowledge. So if you know, because no one want to talk about himself, but everyone knows his skills. So if you know that you have to improve something in your life to get a better position in your job or in life, just do it because it's something that you know. In addition of that, some of us, we have in our ita that we are supposed to rogate our head, to feed the warriors. When we feed the warriors in the beginning of the year, they open, like Joseph explained, Ogun open the path for us. So it's important to feed them. It's important to put some at the mood to Ochun, because Ochun is in charge to sweet everything for you. So we need to keep the balance between hard work and sweetness. So even though you work so hard, you need to rest you. You need to feed you or eat you. You need to talk with your family. Because when people work so hard and it's ogunda, sometimes you don't have communication with your family. And this is the problem. Sometimes we are living with our children, but we don't know them. Because we leave the house early in the morning and come back late at night. So we don't know them. And by the time that we want, to correct them for any situation in particular, in the confrontation because you don't know how to speak with them. So Ogunda Check talk about that, the family. And also the people that have blood problem with the blood pressure and all of that, go to the doctor and check out something that we have in our community. Either we don't know what happened with our body. We don't go to the doctor until we are sick. No one want to do a physical. We want to do the bosses and feed the worry. That is good. But also we need to check out our body. What happened with our body once a year. And you talk with people, you ask them and they say, no, I don't go to a doctor for 2 years, for 3 years. So you could have something in your body that you don't know until it doesn't blow out in front of your face. So at that time, even though you want to do the both help you, but don't cure you. It's important to go to the doctor too. This is something, that I brought to your attention, and you must keep it in mind, because when something is growing and we don't know, sometimes it's too late. When we go to the doctor on time, we have, time to solve this problem. Egun of un ave, of un talk about Egun, about the masses, about how to learn to attend Egun, to provide Egun with everything that is correct in different ceremonies. Why we feed Egun when we start the ceremonies? This is something that the community need to learn about it and communicate with your godparents. Sometimes they got some way that the godparents teach something, but if you do not ask, if you don't ask to your godfather, he doesn't know that you don't know. So take time also to communicate with your godparents, to ask questions, to have a meeting together. And this go to develop your Ori, because Ori is conscience. Ori is knowledge. But we need to work and feed Ori in order to get the resource that we want. Ya tú sabes. Continúa, Mariné. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Frank. So I invited you all who are viewing with us to place your questions in the Q&A box. I saw one question in the chat. I will say, some of these questions don't directly speak to the matter of the Odu of the year. I think that, there's some solicitation of personal advice. So I want to just honor that those questions were asked and honor the people who asked them, and also say we're not going to really engage in sort of personal advice giving. But we're talking about Ogunda, we're talking about violence, we're talking about conflict. And there is a question in the chat around, I will say it's a question about preparation. Someone asked about weapons. That's the only question we've received so far is, what do these Odu tell us about weapons? I also would like to bring you, invite each of you as your reflections emerge to kind of talk to us. We've talked about family life. We've talked about honoring tradition. We've talked about personal sort of development, self-realization, developing our own consciousness. We've talked about learning. There are a lot, and we've talked about physical health. There are also a lot of sort of warnings in the Odu around domestic violence, family violence and conflict, violence and conflict in the society in general. I just would like to, given the sort of the temperature of the world now, pan out a little bit and invite you all to reflect on what these Odu teach us about how to manage these things. I will also say, the warning about alcohol, for example, there's warnings about promiscuity. There are warnings about, protecting male and female reproductive systems. And how to, protection of pregnancies if they come. So pregnancies that are unexpected could come, but they also need to be tended to through a bowl. So if you could sort of just, whoever would like to jump in, please talk to us a little bit about the sort of the self-care dimension, but also the community care, community security kind of dimensions of these Odu, and how folks that are watching should navigate these things. Babare, I think you're unmuted.
Yeah, well, I'm unmuted, but not visual, but that's okay.
We can see you.
Oh, you can see me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, as time goes by, a number of Odus came up. Obviously, this is an example of acknowledging the Odu that come from the different places, and each of them has some kind of validity. You mentioned Ogunda Trupo, a lot of Ogunda, which refers to Ogun, but there's some very important information to be gotten from each of these Odu. For instance, Ogunda Trupo has a proverb, a refrain, which says, Casa de herrero, cuchillo de palo. Now, what does that mean? In the house of the iron worker, knives made out of wood. So people will say, what does that mean? But that was a very important action for people. Sometimes the iron worker, he spends all his time going in everybody's house, sharpening their knives. So when you get home, you find he doesn't sharpen his own knives. Shoes for the shoemaker is another expression of that same thing. You have to take care of yourself first, and by taking care of yourself first, then you can take care of others and not the other way around. One of the things is very important, a theme that I see throughout is the idea that you yourself can cure yourself. You yourself can help yourself. In Oturaniko, for example, speaks of the reverence for Egun. That's where we make the Teja de Muerto, to honor the Egun is used with the sign Oturaniko. I'm very want everyone to understand that Ogun sometimes represents violence, but must remember the story. Ogun might have been the first killer, but when you turn iron into plowshares, you become an agriculturist. You grow vegetables, you grow food. So there's two functions. One can be violent, but the other one can be very productive and creative. Ogun cuts through many times, goes straight for the problem, and as opposed to moving to the right, moving to the left, all that sort of thing. So Ogun is very straightforward. In terms of he could be very rough. So Ogun opens roads, but now after the old road is open, we have to smooth it out. We may have to make it better. But the most important thing is Ogun is very direct. So many of the Odu we like to relate to. Osaode from Jersey mentions the fact that Ochun and Obatala exchanged silver for gold. There's a whole panorama here in terms of how people relate to each other. So Obatala, who was very rich and had gold and a palace and many godchildren, saw Ochun, who seemed to have not very much, but she was wearing silver. In some kind of way, Obatala thought that the silver was giving her happiness and so he exchanged with her. So many people think that there was a loss there, but so we say that we find a fault in the personality of Obatala, that he envied the success and attributed that success to the silver that Ochun had. But in reality, let's look at it another way. Obatala realized the value of something, and it didn't have to do with the price of things. Silver doesn't cost as much as gold. And now, ultimately, gold goes with Ochun. She should have had gold. Silver goes with Obatala. He should have had silver. So we have to take each of these patakis, which I give great importance to, and knowing the pataki, the sacred stories that go with each of those Odu. And with them comes the knowledge, and sometimes it's a little different. Sometimes there's an angle to life. If you approach things directly, sometimes you don't see it. You ever see a dog move his head to the side to give it a little different perspective, a little different idea of how we're going to solve this problem? And that's what happens with any kind of solution to a problem. It's usually unique, it's different, it's got to handle the problem. And we many times will have to approach something from a different angle. Ogun was a great hunter, and he went into the forest and he'd see his prey, and he'd in some kind of way go after it and make a lot of noise. And by the time he'd get to the prey, they'd be gone because of the noise. Now, Ochosi comes together and he shoots, and the prey falls in the forest, but he can't reach it. So we have two great hunters who do not work together, but we find out later in life that together they complement each other, find help, organization. So Ogun and Ochosi together work together. Ogun sees the prey, he opens up the path. Ochosi hits it, and together they go in and they are able to be fed that day. So cooperation, very important. And the idea of giving homage to our ancestors and remember where we came from, and giving that same nurture that you might have received as a child to someone else. Many different things. That's the way when we say there's different Odus that come from different places, we have to learn to take something from one, take something from another. When an Odu comes out and has all kinds of advice, remember, some of it doesn't apply to you. That's understandable, but learn to find that gem, that kernel, that diamond that's going to give you the ache to move forward and be able to handle all of these problems that are coming up. Because Ogun, I even mentioned it, I think war is coming in some kind of way. War is happening now, and what do we do about it? We have to find a way to cool things down, to make things. Ogun is quick thinking, but sometimes there's other factors that have to come into effect to make life easier for us. Family, understanding, and love between people is important also. And I'll go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Baba Ring. I invite any other elders. Baba John, we haven't heard from you in a while. Is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I would like to say, we only got about 7 minutes left, so we'll end this with two things, like I said: doable, lay low, and the other thing is communication. Talk to each other, not at each other. That we can do more communication with everybody, and like what was talked about earlier before, or in terms of collectively do things, community. Like I said, there was things I talked about before. There was more camaraderie in religion back in the day in the 60s than there are now, you know. And now everybody just so far apart. The only way we're going to win this thing, and the only way we're going to survive this thing, the way environment and the way society is now, is we have to work collectively and work together. And like this institution, again, that has been around for 50 years and be around hopefully another 50 years. These are things that people need to participate and support. That's all I have to say.
Baba, Baba Joseph.
Um, I just want to stress like the unifying force of the universe, which is Olodumare, is aggregate by nature. Like the cosmos, the universe, creation, everything is aggregate. It works in clusters. It's aggregate by nature. That's divine principle. So, in specifically in the Letra de la Casona, is very foretelling in the prophecy. It says the the Osobo is lost due to negligence or abandonment. So the main weapon to address all this is to really reconnect with the ancestral communal way of living, and know that we all play a part in this ecosystem called Earth, and that we have a role to assume and to address, which we picked and choose when we chose our own destinies, when we all have our own Ori, and that Ori is what connects us with the divine. And that divine is just really like a interconnected spider web, called spiritual spider web that weaves everything together. So it's the assume the challenge of weaving collective ways that we can protect ourselves, protect our family, protect our communities, protect our everything around us. And that is the key way of creating future and maintaining life afloat. And because with a Yobe given that the Osobo, right, talks about the separation of the earth from the sky, the earth from heaven. Humanity wants to live in a way that's counter to what Olodumare really wants, and that is not a small thing. To come as a prophecy saying like that there's a lot of loss is gonna happen due to negligence of not wanting to live in terms of the natural laws, and that principle of this irumole, very important irumole called al suwada, which is a blade of grass is to a savanna what a tree is to a forest. Like how they say in Spanish is un palo no hace monte solo, right? So it's about weaving that community, working within that community, and make things happen and take care of ourselves in the best way.
Baba Xavier.
I'll attempt to be brief just to address kind of what was asked in terms of the political strata. Two of the things that this Odu for Ofunabe talks about is making sure that we have alignment with the people and the things that we want to, so that the alignment and the allegiance that we have is grounded in what our true belief is. Because what we can do is we can kind of get caught up in the world, and there could be a lot of mistaken identity that happens in the process. So uh, the Odu is telling us, what do you stand for? What do you have your allegiance and your alignment to in such a way that is positive, right? Because the other aspect of that can be something that's not as positive. So it's talking about being rooted in self. With all that being said, I think that the biggest message that Ifa is telling us is to look at ourselves. One of the things that we spoke about briefly was the prophecy, which is loss. And so, if we're going to lose anything, a lot of the stories and a lot of the messages have a lot to do with negative attributes that us as humans tend to garner within misguided feelings, jealousy, having the envy, not, the infighting. A lot of what happens in this Odu is, who has the seniority, who has the right, and the imposing of that. I believe this, so therefore I have to now dominate this. And so Ifa is saying here that only brings loss. So before we think about the world, we have to think about our consciousness, ourselves. We have to look within. And we have to purify our mind. We have to purify our habits and our ways. If there's going to be any loss, it should be the loss of jealousy. It should be the loss of negative thinking. It should be the loss of harming. All of these things should be the things that we lose in the process, right? So Ifa really is bringing the messages. Look at yourself, reflect on yourself. And Ifa, we have, you know, a message that when you begin the path to initiation, it happens once, and each day you're reinitiating yourself. You're re-cleansing, you're refreshing your consciousness so that you're always on the move and you're always trying to get to a next level of self. So a lot of what the Odus across are telling us is to look at self, reflect on self, have silence and quiet to see who you are and see where there needs to be changes, because that's where it begins. Everything else is a reaction that we have to what's happening in the world. But even that is viewed through the lens of what's happening in here, right? So we need to look at self.
Thank you, Baba Xavier. Baba Danny.
Going back to the prophecy of Ofunabe, where it says loss due to not taking care of what is brought to our attention, okay? And looking at the prophecy of the Asociación Ogunda Trupon, where it says Iriariku, the blessing of longevity and good health. We have to take care of ourselves, okay? Ofunabe, with this prophecy, it says we have to take care of what is brought to our attention. Sometimes people get very caught up with life and they ignore the things that are around them, the problems that are brewing, right? And when you look at the Odu Ofunabe, it talks about sometimes the things that we don't see that are right in front of us. It talks about the things that are in the fog, okay? The things that are not necessarily seen with the naked eye, right? Things that are internal, whether it's internally with our organs, with our body, with the things we cannot see, or emotionally. So we really need to take care of ourselves because our surroundings right now are chaotic. And if we don't take care of ourselves, we just wind up kind of doing a nosedive into this chaos unintentionally, right? Where we're not necessarily maybe part of the problem that's happening, but we can't even be part of the solution because we're not well. Okay. All Odus, all three of these Odus, I like to look at the whole thing, but talk about the need, right, to take care of our organs, okay, to take care of our liver, to take care of our kidneys, to take care of our heart, okay. Talks about the need to see a doctor, okay, because we have a lot of Ogundas, and Ogunda is the surgeon, where Ogun becomes the surgeon, okay, and the knife needs, it has a need to cut. So we're speaking about the need to maybe open up our bodies to see what is not right. Okay. So we really have to be this year, with all of the Odus that have been forecast, looking at them, take care of ourselves. Even with Osaure being impulsive, right? Being impulsive, getting angry, having that rage that can affect our heart. So we really need to be careful across the board with our health, and especially with our emotional health, and being, again, I'm going to go back to saying what I said earlier, reactionary, right? Being reactionary, sometimes that doesn't help the situation, and it doesn't make for a result that is beneficial to anyone.
Baba Frank.
No, okay, I go back to the Odum from the Association Yoruba of Cuba, Ogundatrupo, that this Odum had one of his patakines, it talk about the mother that recommend the son to go and see Orumila before he goes to visit his girlfriend. And he went to Orumila, and Orumila told him to do the ebo, but he went to the market to buy everything that he needs. And he saw one friend, and the friend said, don't go to Orumila. He just want you money. It's better that we go to take some drinks. And he took the drinks, and after that, he went to his girlfriend's house, but he didn't know that they were waiting for the last one to show up, all the women that live over there, to give it to Ogun to sacrifice him. So they cast him, they tied him, but the mother that saw that her son didn't come back because always mother is mother. She went to see Orumila, and Orumila told her, your son didn't come back, and she did the ebo for her son. So he had the possibility to untie and run from that place. So when he got Orumila house, Orumila said, you need to say for Maferefun, my mother, because she did the above for you. So this is the year that is important. Again, the family and the youngest, they are supposed to listen to the mother. I always told the youngest, your best friend, no matter how she is your mother. When we count Ocha, the first person that you need to throw is your mother. The only person that can deal with your orichas, even though don't crown Ocha, is your mother. When I left Cuba, I left all my oricha with my mother. So the mother is so important. And we are living time now that the younger don't want to listen to the mother. They prefer to go to the party. They prefer to go with their girlfriend. They do different things and their life in risk. So it's important to talk to them that the mother is the best friend to communicate with her. So this is something that talk in this autumn. And when you go to Orumila, because a lot of people want to a reading from Ifa or with the oriate. I want the reading, I want to know about the year, how open, la, la, la. Okay, great. But they don't want to do the book. When the oricha, because we cannot manipulate the dilogun or the babalao, the equally. When you are supposed to do the ebo, do the ebo. If not, don't go for a reading. Because when you do the ebo, you go to carry this osobo with you. And then after that, when the people have problems, say, Abba, I did the reading, but I can't iré, but iré, you need to do the ebo, or you need to offer and the move for the rich. Always we have to do something. That this is important that the people keep in mind. If you go for reading, do the book. That's all. Thank you, Mariniere.
Thank you, Frank. You know, I want to, we said that we would extend ourselves a few minutes because we had more than one. We had several questions specifically about, and we just want to address it. We had several questions about, is there, you know, a collective ebo that we should be doing? Is there a particular ebo that we should be doing? I think we said this at the top. I'm going to say this again, and then I'm going to give our panelists an opportunity, not so much to prescribe an ebo, since we've already stated that individually you should be seeking out your ebo, but to respond to this question of, if you were to offer this community a collective action, whether that's a religious or ritual action, or other sort of recommendation, given the temperature of the year that we are forecasting, what would that be? As many of you who are friends of the center over the last 50 years know, the center is a cultural and artistic institution. We typically take an institutional position of not sharing religious advice. So I just want to be very transparent about that. But we do want to honor, you know, there's a particular set of conditions that we're facing, and we want to respect and honor here, which is that, and folks mentioned this in the questions, which is that we are also experiencing collective trauma in our communities as people are kidnapped off of the streets of the United States. We are experiencing, and in some cases, our community members and family members, we are experiencing escalated violence. Baba Ray, you know, reminded us that these signs, you know, urge us to prepare for war on some level, right? All of the messages we've been given are about preparation, security, getting our minds, our bodies, our emotions, and our spiritual life in order. And to Baba Frank's point, and actually finishing what we start, right? The abo is And Baba John said, right, lay low and do ebo. But the ebo is to take care of your mind, take care of your head, finish what you start. Don't get the reading. Get the reading and do the ebo, right? And also, it's what I love. The old viejas used to say, the elder women used to say, ebo conductual. It's behavioral. It's a behavioral ebo, right? It's about checking yourself. It's about taking care of your family. It's about educating your children. It's about honoring your commitments and obligations to your partners and your spouse. It's about preventing violence in your home, in your family, in your community. And it is about evolving, transforming, and growing into your gifts, your talents, your higher consciousness, so that you can be better and contribute to the collective well-being, right? This is sort of a synthesis of the messages that we've heard from all of the elders and the priests on this panel. So that is where we will begin. But I would like to offer, and I want to restate, gracias Frank, right? I want to thank Baba Frank again for raising this matter of the mother saves the child, right? This is about home training in plain English, in plain New York English. This is about home training, but this is also about the fact that your mother, your godmother, your elder can save you, right? When you're distracted, when you're not on point, right? But also having the humility, right, to let yourself be saved. So with that, I want to invite the elders, the other panelists, to, if you were to offer a consejo, an advice, a recommendation, and especially in the line of this question around, is there a collective ebo? Is there a collective action that we should be taking as we navigate? And that could be conductual, or that could be something else. We heard about our ancestors. That's very important for us this year. What would that be? What would you offer the people that are listening and watching? And, I'm going to invite Baba Ray, if you would like to begin. I see your finger, and then Danny. Danny.
Okay. I understand that problem many times. That happens because we have certain people who are not initiated. We have people who are initiated many years and still they want to do something simple. I want to bring up the idea that sometime the rich man goes to the prophet to find out what he can do to make his life better. And the prophet says, just go to the river. And the rich man is disappointed because he thought he was going to have to give a whole bunch of things, all of his money away. And it's not true. Sometimes the ebo, the sacrifice, the offering can be very simple. All of this energy is coming from Orunmila. And so when there's nothing to be else that you're going to do, I have told people many times, 2 candles, 2 coconuts, and water is the basic thing. You see how you might be disappointed that it shouldn't have been 3 yards of red cloth, white cloth, black cloth, and so, and a whole go to the bank and get the money for it, and it's not true. Sometimes the simple thing is just to acknowledge where that energy is coming from, acknowledge where that help is going to come from, and it's very simple. But if anything, 2 coconuts, a candle, and water. There was a whole initiative in Nigeria many years ago when I first started, where people were saying, all you need is water. I think in Cuba, they said, put a glass of water on the radio. And there was a man, I don't know his name, I'm sorry, who said, put water on the radio and you can get cured. So water is very important. One of the first lessons I learned in Nigeria from the babalawos is that Orunmila married water. What is that? That was his first wife. Whether that's true or not, but the point is that water is a very cleansing, very helpful element, and as you know, very essential to life. And so just water, omi tutu ona tutu ile tutu, is very important. So in keeping with the idea that it's not our responsibility here to give you a bowl offering advice, but make it simple and make it sincere, and you'll be very successful.
Thank you, Baba Ray. Baba Danny.
I concur with Baba Ray. I was taught the eldest offering you put to any orisha is obio mitutu, and that was always what was recommended, to act as like a vehicle to transmit what you're trying to petition. And there's various ways to do it. Some people keep the coconuts whole with the gourd of water and 2 candles. Some people break it up, the coconut into 4 pieces with the gourd of water. Some people take the coconut halves and fill it with water. So there's different ways of offering it. But that was always used to transmit the petition that we're trying to get to whatever deity. You can put it to Egun, you can put it to Elegba, you can put it to your Orumila, you can put it anywhere. Obiomitutu has always been the default and the elder of Adimus. And it's unfortunate that many people don't see that. And even I see that a lot as someone who does a lot of itas. People want something grandiose. They want, 5 yards of fabric, 7 chickens, and then 3 virgins. They don't want to, don't see the power with Ache and something offering. Now, another collective thing that a community can do, and we've done this a couple of times during hard times, is to perform inangareo. Okay, perform the inangareo ceremony. Where you have to have an elder, of course, who can direct it. Where you're offering asaraeko, which is a cornmeal mixture, and the song, the chant, tells you exactly what's happened. Inatutumbelaye, we're cooling the earth off. Right? Why are we cooling the earth off? We want to make ita. Right? So, but not to get into too many details, we need to cool the earth off. So, a collective inangareo together with community member, people who know, and everybody can participate in that. You can be an aleyo and participate in an inangareo. That's what I have to.
Baba Danny, Baba Joseph, I'm just gonna call on y'all.
Oh, I'm glad that the spirit of the old viejita that taught me that to be a good religious person, all you need is a glass of water and a candle, and that I cannot stress it enough. So do the coconuts, do the water, and so on. And I think it's a lesson in terms of do we really trust who we praying to? Because one prayer should be enough. And if we trust what we're praying to and what we're praying for? And I love it when there's a perfect synchronicity and the message is very clear. That is the best step, is to learn within the power of prayer and the strength that it gives and the balm that it serves for the soul. So like when in turmoil, there's nothing better to do than to put that offering of water, the candle and the coconuts, and pray it. Praying will make the world of difference. It always has and always will. So just never lose focus of that. All small deeds will move all these forces forward, and you will see the confirmations. Just do a test how that day, like when start your day and put that intention out there with the candle, the water, and the coconut, and say, "This is what I need to do today." Have your day, try it out. You're gonna see a very different day compared to when you do not do it. And to the point of Ray, yes, Orula did get married with water, and it's precisely in a yobe. So, and that's the metaphor that I use in terms of how water reinvigorates in freshness and when it's hot and when we're working on that. Is from that story when Orumila married water, and that's how he replenished his strength and his ashe to keep doing his work on earth. Um, and I love what Danny suggested. So, even though the center cannot do something religious, but you can have like a wellness festival. That's a perfect way to do an excuse. And everybody does a potluck, everybody brings, there's a collective feast, you do an angareo, bring some water, cool things off, have a good time, have some good conversation, share stories. Already see it happening, and it could be fairly effortless when it's community driven. It just happens, and then the center can just facilitate the process.
And also, I want to add that you all, wherever you are, we have people here from Nigeria to the United Kingdom, across the Caribbean, the Americas, and, all of the Americas, North, Central, and South, that do things where you are, right? One of the things I keep restating, because it keeps emerging as a theme, is about interdependence and mutual aid. And all of the elders on the panel have said, start in your home, right? So raise the glass of water in your home. Do the omitutu in your home with your people, your children, your family, your community, and whoever you consider your cabildo, your mutual aid society. Baba John, we have to, this thing of Ori has stayed with me, in that we have to lead from wherever we are. There are a lot of questions in the Q&A around how do we respond to the political and social crisis, and what do we do, right? I posted something yesterday that said there are 1,000 responses, right? The many responses will be born from each of us if our head is clear, and if we are on point individually and in our subunits of family and community. So with that, Baba John, I would like to invite you as well.
Well, just what Bobby was saying, and all the others, as we say, abebe contuto, OB, and Omi Tutu. My colleagues, the ones Hipio Bunamasa and Javier Funcosa, they pulled Osa May and Obiati and Obiwale, Detua Locum. The most simplest thing I've heard all year: go to the ocean with molasses and flowers and just give it to Yemaya. It was what is it, Egbe Yemaya Society? What they do about every September, they go down to Rockaway. When I used to go back and forth, besides Nigeria, over to Brazil, what they do down there before the beginning of the Samba Festival. A lot of people don't know that. It was Brian Gumbel, I think, back in the day when it was NBC, how they showed the whole ceremonies with all the chiefy oloshas and how they be hooking all that stuff up, and have the whole line of bata drummers before they start the Samba Festival. And then at the end of the Samba Festival, all of them go out to the ocean, do their thing, give something to Yamaya, Olokun. Of course, everybody hurry up and get back in so nobody would drown. But again, those are communal things that everybody does around the world, different cultures, different practices. And those are things we need to do and keep it simple. Just like I said, only tutu and agbon, and coconut. Can't get any simpler than that. I mean, just like you all were talking about before, it doesn't have to be all elaborate bows and all that other kind of stuff. Just keep it simple, basic. That's really what we're doing. We're going back to the future. We're going back to basics, study things the way it worked before it got all stretched out and complicated. Look within yourself, look within your community. As Barbara Frank said, in terms of, hey, there's no other love like a mother's love. You understand? That's very, very important. Same thing like a hostess had said, whether madrina or, elders in the family or whatever, that's that respect. That's that love. That's what we got to get back to. We kind of like gotten away from that. That's all.
Mari, I want to jump in for a few minutes because you said something that's really important. We are not a religious institution, right? Mm-hmm. We are a cultural organization. Right. And what we are providing is a platform for the conversations to be had. We are in a time, though, in our history where I want to encourage folks to not be driven by fear, right? We don't want our joy stolen, like everything else that's been taken from us. When I speak to a collective Ashe and I speak to a collective Ebo, it's that we are sacred beings. We have a sacred energy. that many of us forget to tap. And I'm simply asking for all of us to take a moment in this time where we are afraid. I mean, it's no longer about, will they or might they come to our doors? We're seeing doors being torn down and folks come, none of us is feeling safe, even in our own homes. So what do we do on a platform like this one, where there are folks joining us internationally, where we can take a moment? What is the omitutu? What is prayer? What is acknowledging Egun? What is acknowledging our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents, right? Taking a moment to say, while we're praying at our altars and praying to our Egun, we're praying for the world. We keep talking about community. We keep talking about unity. We keep talking about the importance of coming together as a fuller community. That is the Abo I'm speaking to. I'm not saying let's all get together at the center and go and do some massive something at the ocean or the river, but certainly what we can do as individuals to protect ourselves, our homes, our children, our families, our futures as a community is what I'm speaking to. And again, I think it was Danny who said it, the ashe, the breath, the sacred in our breath, the sacred in what is our prayer is what I'm speaking to. And that is where the collectiveness comes in. We can have these conversations at the end of the night, hit leave event, and we're done. And I'm saying we're not done. And as we're approaching and celebrating 50 and thinking beyond 50, I'm telling you, folks, it's hard. We are having a difficult time as an institution. And yet every day we're getting the questions you're seeing in the chat, the folks showing up at our door with questions and anxious and fear. And so I want to kind of shift that thinking and activate an energy and a spirit. We talk about how spirit lives within us. We live within spirit. And we don't activate that, or we're not activating that. Or how do we activate it differently so that we have different responses and different ways of moving and navigating at this time? Thank you.
I want to invite Baba Frank to give us your final consejo for the colectivo.
Yes. Okay. I don't see myself here. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Now that we are talking about the water, I have two advisors for the community, because there are a lot of people for different places, like Marinieves said, from England, from Chicago. Some of them, they don't know really about the religion, but something that is general, like Melody was talking, is the bóveda. So you can investigate about the bóveda. That is simple. It's water. Just the glasses of water with one in the middle, could be 7 or could be 9, and pray. When we pray, we connect with our spirits and also our ancestors. That is something so simple that more of them did at that time, and little by little, we are losing the spiritual place. We are one chicken, we want fabric, we want do and a bow, but no one take the time to pray. And this is something so important that is the great ebo. That is the great connection, because when you have your own spirit aligned with you, you don't shake, because you have the great sixth sense to guide your own life. And also you ori. And when we are talking about ori, for the people that are in the religion, no matter if you count ocha or not, again, we go back Everything is connected. Coconut, water, ori, efun, a simple rogation to refresh and feed you ori. So sometimes the people think that for do a rogation, you must be in a problem or have to be through the reading. No, if you are the person that have a lot of responsibilities, that you study a lot, that you have to deal with a lot of problems in your life, you can go and knock the door or you got parents. Now we can call them through the cell phone. Please, what day are you free just for the rogation of the beginning of the year? Sometimes we take bad decision because our ori is not fresh. And this is something simple. It's coconut, water, ori, efun, oni, something simple. And we refresh our ori. So if you do that, you will feel so much better because something so important like melody was mentioned in the fear. People need confidence in themselves. They need confidence in what they do. If you don't have confidence in yourself, nothing go to change your life. No matter if you count ocha, no matter the amount of oricha that you receive, no matter the amount of ebose, we need confidence in ourselves. To develop that, sit down with your spirit. If you don't have the bóveda, one glass, just one glass of water, and a vase with flour and pray. With that is more than enough. Later, you learn how to do the bóveda, but we need to pray. And we are in time now in the world that we need to pray because we never know what going to happen tomorrow. The prayer is something simple and fast. But during this time, we need to pray. So that is my recommendation for the community. Thank you. And ya tú sabes. Oh, chareo.
And Xavier, our newest and youngest oluwo on the panel. Thank you for joining us this year. Your final offering to the collective, please.
Thank you so much. It's been such an honor. Ifa is the study of nature, right? And so we're kind of keeping that in mind. I think of something that I had an elder tell me once, or tell the audience rather, and it was before before I kill a chicken, I'm gonna kill the chicken in you, right? And so it's this idea, and I ground this advice towards the idea that sometimes the material things, although they serve a purpose, again, the real transformation happens inwards, and that's the thing sometimes that takes us forwards. I think one thing that we need to kind of remember sometimes is the honor of the Orisha, the materials, all the things that go into that are all pathways to reinforce our consciousness, right? So they're all tools to have the inner transformation that really is trying to be sought. Okay? So on a personal level, the abo of self is the most important thing. The abo, we can see that each part of our bodies can make a sacrifice that's going to inform a better self. What are we viewing that we need to stop looking at? What are we hearing that is contributing to a negative mindset? Where are we placing ourselves that are giving rise to negative feelings, anxiety, depression? The more that we're able to sacrifice these things, we can find that we have an alignment that is better with self. As a collective, and as we think about the Odu Ogunda Masa, is what is it that we can use in terms of our talents and our gifts? How can we sacrifice our time and be there for somebody, be there for an institution, or offer the gifts that we have? Say that we have something that we think that we're really great at, and we reach out to the center and say, I do this thing, I have a really great idea on how. That's how community is fostered. That's how our gifts are being heightened. And that's how the sacrifice that we're giving is helped to lead to a transformation. So I just want to reiterate that the biggest, I can't tell you how many times in ritual, the first thing that I've asked and that has taken is the idea of, is there something that I have to change in order for this to go well? Is there something within me? Yes. And it's the abort of the character. So that is the most important thing, if you are looking to inform your mind in more in how you think, potentially it could be reading more, reading positive things, doing these things that don't necessarily cost much and that don't take much in the physical sense. The physical stuff, those things are important. They serve a purpose. But all of that without a transformation inside here is for naught. And that's what Ifa tells us.
Thank all of you for joining us. We began with almost 260 people. We are at about 233 people, which means we didn't lose very many of you. And we're very grateful for you joining us, for your support of the center, especially this year, its 50th year. And my prayer for all of you is that you always find the people and conditions that will serve your highest good. So may each of you and everyone that you touch when you leave here help you to find your highest good, and may you do the same for them. Have a very good night, and thank you especially to those of you who joined us from across the world.